chicken with celery and cashew nuts. There's quite a lot of ingredients, or it seems there's a lot of ingredients here, but it's not really that many, and it's actually a very, very simple dish to cook. Like a lot of Cantonese food, it relies on good preparation, and the cooking time is really quite minimal. Right, let's start you off. First of all, we'll need some chicken, and what I do is I cut that. If you look at the way the grain runs sort of that way, I cut it like that on a sort of bias and against the grain until I end up with some nice pieces like that. The amount of chicken you use, my brother and I are big meat eaters, so we're using about twice the volume of chicken as we are to celery, but I would probably say, to be more authentic and Chinese in your recipes, you'd probably use about equal, or actually less than equal, in terms of chicken. This dish is just fantastic. It really is nice and delicious, and it's something you should really try out. Okay, next ingredient of course is celery, and what I've done is I've taken celery and cut it into nice sized pieces. Let me just take my rice off, it started to rattle. Yeah, and I cut it into nice sized pieces like that, and I'll show you how to cook that in a bit. For contrast and for another depth of flavour, I've cut up a small carrot, and again I've cut it into sort of diagonal bias slivers. And this, with stir fries, you generally want things around about the same size, so the chicken's around about the same size as the celery, and the carrot, although it's a hard vegetable, is cut to a size that will cook round about the same time as the celery does. I've got a couple of cloves of garlic which have fairly roughly chopped. I've got two fairly sizable spring onions which have chopped rather finely. I've got half a brown onion which I've literally just chopped into pieces around about the same size as these. So that's that. Right, you'll need some oil for stir frying, and the best oil I know for stir frying is groundnut oil. It's really good, but any vegetable oil is fine, but groundnut oil is particularly good because it's got a really rather high flash point. For the sauces, I like to mix it up a bit, and I do this with Thai and Chinese recipes. This one's actually a Thai sauce. It's a mushroom soy sauce. I've run out of my Chinese mushroom soy, but this is a really, really good one. That's Healthy Boy mushroom sauce, and I'm using a Chinese standard premium light soy sauce, which is an exceptionally good one. I'm using another soy-based flavouring sauce, which is Golden Mountain. It's rather good. It doesn't contain any MSG either, so that's rather good. And a really good sauce to use with any vegetable, particularly green vegetables, is oyster sauce. And I'm using about 2 teaspoons, about 10 mils of each sauce. Alright, the oyster sauce gives a really good depth of flavour, and it brings out a fantastic flavour in all green vegetables. In Hong Kong they have a lovely vegetable they call choy sum, and cooked, stir fried and then lightly tossed in oyster sauce, to me, is perhaps the finest vegetable flavour I've ever tasted. It's really wonderful. You'll also need some cashews. I've got some roasted salted cashews. Typically Chinese chefs would use plain ones and fry them up, but I'm a lazy cook, so I'm using ready salted ones. A little splash of sesame oil goes a long way in this. I'm using really good quality toasted sesame oil, and just a little splash right at the end. It's really an aromatic oil and not one that you'd want to be using to cook in. It's just really added for flavour. There's some corn flour, corn starch, which I've mixed with a bit of water. It's about two teaspoons of cornstarch. Likewise, I've got a heaped teaspoon of cornstarch over here, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in a minute. Right, the first thing I want to do is get my chicken into marinade. So I'm going to throw my chicken into a bowl. I'm going to throw in a random soy sauce, it doesn't matter which one you throw in at that point, and my garlic. So let's get that all there. That all goes in there, and get in there down and dirty with your hands. And as with other recipes, because the chicken's cut up so well, you don't really need to marinate this for a long time. One other ingredient you can put in the marinade is a little splash of Chinese cooking wine, Chinese rice wine. And another alternative you can use if you don't have Chinese wine is a very dry Fino sherry, which once it's cooked, I defy anyone to tell the difference. Perhaps a Chinese chef could, but I can't. All right, so a quick just to splash of that in there would be rather nice right now. Chinese cooking wine. However, this will be marvellous just as it is. So we would now typically leave that for about an hour to marinate, but I don't have that time. Another thing I told you I was going to do with the corn flour is now I'm going to dust that over the top and mix that in. The corn flour has the effect of protecting, to some extent, it protects the texture of the meat as it cooks. So you just massage that into the meat before you cook it. And I'm going to switch focus now over to my cooker and show you how this is done. Alright, my large fricassee pan is doubling as my wok for this recipe. Woks don't work particularly well off gas, they don't work very well on these kind of hobs. But this cookware really does, and this is the next best thing I've got for stir frying, and it's also very good to demonstrate with. Alright, so into a very hot wok or fry pan. You need a steep sided fry pan. You need a couple of tablespoons of oil, and we'll get that moving around and let that come up to temperature. You can get this oil almost smoking. Let's get that in now. Get all the nice bits in, all the good stuff in there. There we go. And spread that out so it gets cooked quickly. And then now we keep stirring and frying until the chicken is beginning to brown all over. While that's cooking, I'm just going to give a shout out to Dan, and I think a lot of other small YouTube channels will agree with me, the ones that are lucky enough to have Dan as a viewer. Will agree that he's a really great viewer, in that he gets in there and he comments on every video, and he's just a good guy, you know, and he's very supportive of the channels that he supports. And so there's a big thumbs up to you, mate, for all the thumbs up you give us. So we get to that stage now where all the chicken is starting to look about right. So it's right at this point that we can dump all the veg in apart from the spring onions. So that's the carrot, the celery and the onion. The first time I was served this dish was in the army cookhouse at what barracks was it? Anyway, it was in Hong Kong. It was cooked by the the Chinese local enlisted guys in the catering corps, and I thought, what, chicken with celery? Are you kidding me? And no, it works. Trust me, it is so good. So we get that in there now, and we keep that stirring and frying. We don't want the vegetables to lose the crunch. Right, at this point we can dribble on our remaining soy sauce and our oyster sauce. Oyster sauce is a bit thicker. Now this isn't effectively an oyster sauce dish, but it does need a little oyster. I always like to put a little bit of oyster sauce in it. And we keep stirring and fry that now, and I'll show you where we're going to. Alright, a lot of moisture is starting now to ship out of the celery, because celery contains quite a lot of water. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit more water to it, and just add what's that, about 1/4 cup of water, something like that, which I'm just going to add to it, and then I'll let that come back up to the heat. By this time most of the chicken is cooked through, the vegetables are still nice and crunchy. Alright, so looking at it, I can see it, and it looks a very little bit insipid, so there is another little trick I've got up my sleeve, and this is a superior dark soy sauce. This is used in Chinese recipes more for colouring than it is for the saltiness and other flavouring. So I'm just going to add, I'll show you how much, about a teaspoon of this, probably not even that. So there we go, it's about just over half a teaspoonful, and you'll see how quickly that changes the colour of this dish. There you go. Now it's at this point that we need to add our cornstarch. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit in to start with to see where I am. So, and then we don't want this becoming way too thick, because we want it to be mostly, it's not a very thick saucy dish, but it does have that nice satisfying sauce in the bottom. I think that's enough. So you've got to that stage now, and this is almost done. This is almost ready to eat. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a large pinch of my spring onions and keep the rest for a garnish. So they go in right now, and then just before I take it off the heat, a little tiny dash of toasted sesame oil right at that moment that you're taking it off the heat. So I'm going to pull that off the heat now and show you that served up. So there it is, served up on a large plate. Doesn't it look great? And on top of that I'm going to put a generous amount of cashews, some lovely finely chopped spring onions, and a few more cashews. Why? Because I can. And that, boys and girls, is chicken with celery and cashew nuts. Thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to follow my channel, please subscribe and be sure to click the bell icon to receive notification of all my upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.